Hi, my name is Brianna Maddock. I'm a biotechnology and microbiology major in NDSU's class of 2022. It is my pleasure to welcome you to NDSU's Women in Philanthropy virtual event. At NDSU, philanthropy transforms the lives of students like me every day. Whether through scholarships, learning from endowed professors, practicing in state-of-the-art facilities, or participating in programs supported by our benefactors, our educations are enhanced because of the generosity of people like you through philanthropy. Investing in the next generation of leaders is one of the best ways to pay it forward. Now, let me introduce the event's MC, Stacey Ackerman. Stacey is a 1994 NDSU graduate, is currently serving as treasurer of the NDSU Foundation Trustees, and serves on the investments committee. She holds her certified trust and financial advisor and certified financial planner designations and has over 25 years of experience in the financial services industry. Welcome, Stacey.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much, Brianna. I tell you, she gave us such a warm and energetic welcome. So for those of you that I don't know, I am Stacey Ackerman and will be serving as your host today. And I am just so excited to be this will be our 5th Women in Philanthropy Luncheon. And it looks a little bit different. I think back to 2 years ago, we were in person at the beautiful Alumni Center. We had the light coming in, we had a delicious lunch, and we were able to visit and share stories. So clearly the world has changed, and I am just so glad to have all of you joining us. We're trying something a little bit different. We're innovating. We're working with Facebook Live, and so we would love to hear your feedback, and we're just so appreciative that you're here listening to what are going to be fabulous stories from some of our trailblazing alumni. Our 3 donors have graduated, one in the 60s, one in the 70s, and one in the 80s. And so we're going to hear from them. What was campus like? What were their courses like? And what inspired them to give and stay involved at NDSU? In addition to that, we'll talk a little bit about the current environment with the CARES Act, as well as deferred giving and the Legacy Challenge. And given that we aren't in person, we still want to make it interactive. So please type any comments or questions. That allows us to customize some of our comments, and we'll want to make sure that we get to some of those burning questions at the end of today's webinar. I would be remiss if I did not have an opportunity to thank our loyal committee members. They probably feel like it was a bit of a lifetime commitment or appointment like the Supreme Court, but we are so glad that they have stayed with us over these last 5 Women in Philanthropy events. So to recognize the committee members, first off, we have Julie Barner. Next, Kay Halverson, Susan Kruger, and Jeannie Wolk. So thank you for all of your great ideas and for your dedication and helping us try something very unique this year. We are just so appreciative of your work and your planning. In addition, you may have seen some of their quotes and stories at the beginning of this broadcast, and I would just encourage you, if you have an opportunity to see them out in the community, you might be part of their network on Facebook, please just drop them a note of gratitude and thanks. I would really appreciate that. In addition, just a year ago, we started what was called our In Our Hands campaign. And for NDSU, this is just incredible. It is a $400 million capital campaign that will be life-changing for our campus, for our students, for our faculty and programming. This is what's going to help us step up even more and pursue excellence on behalf of the communities that we're in, our alumni, and our students and faculty. And I have an update. So it was a $400 million capital campaign, went public last fall. And as of the end of June, this is just for all of you that are part of this webinar, we are now at $367 million. So tremendous progress and work has been done. but we still have work to do. And so today that will be part of our conversation around how can each one of us help and contribute to get to that $400 million goal. So now we are going to jump in and get started. And I am pleased to announce and introduce our first panelist. So Elnore Grove is a 1961 chemistry graduate from the NDSU. She grew up on a farm in Divide County, North Dakota. And talk about a woman ahead of her time. She attended NDSU when it wasn't even called NDSU. We were still the North Dakota Agriculture College. And she is married to her husband, Ronald, and they have been supporters of NDSU for well over 30 years. They have supported the Department of Science and Mathematics. They've had several scholarships they've contributed to before being so inspired and starting their own scholarship fund. And as we know, Elnore was a chemistry teacher, and who wouldn't love her as a chemistry teacher? She really brought the subject to life. She brought it out of the textbooks, out of the classroom, and they did things like make ice cream and tie-dye. In fact, I should be wearing a tie-dye shirt today, Elnore, as a nod to you and to chemistry. So Elnore, thank you so much for joining us from Colorado, and welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay,
So,
well, I went to a small high school of 40 graduates and did not have much higher math or science or anything. So I was pretty intimidated when I got to NDAC. They changed it to NDSU in my junior year. So I was part of that campaign. But there were so many things that NDSU did for that class that helped me feel comfortable. The first thing was there were 3 chem major women, girls, and we were all put in the same dorm, and 2 of us were together as roommates. And so we studied together and we became best friends, and today we're still best friends. And the next thing that happened was, instead of putting us in a service class with 200 chemistry students, we had a separate class with 30 students in it. They said to us, you are our chem majors. They gave us Dr. Festus Manier, who was an emeritus professor. He was like a grandpa. We loved him. He used to give us hugs. We weren't scared. I didn't always get A's, but I got B's, and we just started out on the right foot. Then the next year we had Dr. Charlie Fleetwood. Now he was a challenge. He was tough, but he was fair. And so we spent 20 hours a week in lab every week, and we got to know each other really well. And most of the people in chemistry did not join sororities or fraternities. We had chemistry club, and we would get together and do shows for the elementary students, and we would practice our demonstrations. We also, some of us belonged to something called the Independent Student Association. And we had several people in our class from Fargo High School. So of course they commuted, but most of the students lived on campus and lived in the dorms. My first year of teaching chemistry was in Seattle, Washington, Garfield High School. And the last day of school, one of the girls came up to me and pointed to the bulletin board. And I had a bulletin board called Chemistry's Fun. And she said, who are you kidding? Chemistry's not fun. So that was my goal in my whole 34 years, was to make it relevant, connected, and something that the kids could understand and remember. And today, if I see a student 30 years later and ask them what they remember about chemistry, they will tell me tie-dye. So, and I tied it up. I had a curriculum name called Tie Up Your Curriculum with Tie-Dye. And when the principals came in and said, why are you doing tie-dye in chemistry? I would start explaining the chemistry and they'd say, oh, just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. I won a trip to Bangkok, Thailand with the American Chemical Society to show off my tie-dye over there, and won a lot of awards over the years. And when I started in Seattle, I was the only woman chemistry teacher in 12 high schools. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but I got through it. The last meeting we had, one of the guys came up to me and said, Elnore, you're okay. You think like a man. I said, okay. I took it as a compliment because it meant I had finally been accepted by them. So let's see, what else would you like to
Well,
have?
I'm just curious, you were here in the late 50s, early
Right.
60s,
Right.
and at that time, college wasn't a common path for a lot of young ladies.
Right.
So, who inspired you? Who showed you the way to NDSU?
Well, my dad totally believed in education. He was, his parents were immigrants, and he didn't speak English till he started a country school. I went to a country school for 8 years, but education was always number one for him. And he wanted us to be good students. We did not get an allowance, but we got $4 for every A we made. So we worked hard to make our A's so we would have some spending money. He really believed that women especially needed to go to college to maintain and establish their independence so that we would have choices. So there was never any question that we weren't going to college. It was just a matter of which one. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he was my inspiration. Wonderful, wonderful guy. Yeah.
Where did he immigrate from, and what was his first language?
My grandparents came from Sweden about 1896, and they homesteaded in 1905 in Divide County. And then he just grew up on the farm and continued with the farming. And he was a very good farmer and a very smart man, but he did not have an opportunity for education, but he believed in it. So.
And he wanted to make sure his daughters did. That
right.
is just phenomenal. So
the other thing too, when I was at NDSU, there was one woman in architecture. Her name was Judy. And there was one woman in engineering. And there were 3 women in chemistry. And most of the women were in some home economics subject, because that was pretty much what you were famous for. So we were kind of a little bit different.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I was just struck by, it has been 60 years since you graduated right. from NDSU, mm-hmm. and you're still involved at NDSU. So, tell us a little bit more around why philanthropy is important to you.
Well, I think I kind of got started with my Dollars for Scholars in my own little hometown, and established a scholarship there in my parents' name, and then established one in my name. And then, of course, every year I got the phone call from NDSU. And so I started out giving, $100 a year. And then finally I said, I think we need to do more than that. So I talked to my husband, and Monique was a very inspirational person. She would visit, she had family, I think, in Colorado, and she would come to Colorado every year, come and have breakfast with us. And she guided us along the way as to how we could establish a scholarship so that we would have an ongoing, make a difference to students ongoing. So that's kind of how that happened. And I'm still at the point where I think my scholarship is like worth $2,500. And I want it to be worth about $5,000, because I feel that if you can give a student $5,000, it might mean that they won't have to take that extra job, mm-hmm. that they could go kind of full-time as a student and not have the extra job. So I will be working with Becky and so forth to up that a bit, so that I mean, our pledge is met, but I want it to be bigger. So that's my goal.
Right. And I think we see a lot of alumni do that. If you're able to establish a scholarship fund and you can top it off each year to get to a certain level with a combination of the endowment and annual giving. So that is just absolutely brilliant. So, well, I also know that you've had an opportunity to connect with so many of your scholarship recipients. Have any of them been special? Are there any that you have stayed in contact with?
Well, I stayed in contact with somebody named Anna Renner for a few years, and then I think somehow we went apart. And there is one student now who's at CU Boulder, and we had connected a couple years ago by email, and I said, well, when you get established and find your place to live, let me know and I'll drive up and have lunch with you. It didn't happen, but I can still contact her and still do it. So I just love keeping in contact with my students. And I'm a part of another scholarship organization. And what I have found is if you stay in contact with your students, a lot of times I think they become donors when they get the opportunity, when they start making money. And I have one young man that I've been in contact with now for about 5 years. He's still in medical school. He gives $25 a month to our scholarship organization. So he has started to give back already, even though he's still a student. So I think it's important. To me, it's more than just giving money. To me, it's more, and the young women in Crosby too, with the Dollars for Scholars. I'm still in contact with many of them. So,
yeah. So a couple things I think we can take away from your story is, for many of us, it is about starting small when we graduate and see how that grows and what it evolves into. And then being that role model and showing others how you can make a difference and inspiring that next generation to give and get involved as well.
right.
So one last question as we wrap up is I would be curious, you talked a little bit about Monique and Becky and the team. And so tell us how they've been able to, help you with some of those conversations, because I know that there's a lot of competition for dollars. And so how has their expertise helped you and informed you in terms of making your decisions?
Well, they basically sit down with you and talk about it and show you how much you need to give in order to reach a certain goal. And I know this last year you had something in November, December, North Dakota Gives Day or something like Giving Day or something. And if you gave an extra amount, then something else would happen. And I put out a challenge to my chemistry class. Now, no one took me up on it, but that doesn't mean I won't try again. And I'd like to get some of my other classmates. I think we have about 9 of us left. We've lost 2 or 3. But I would like to get some of my classmates to join and start giving back as well. So that's my goal.
All right. Well, we will bring Elnore back later in the program. But I just want to thank you for sharing your passion for NDSU and how you give. You truly are a trailblazing woman and also a woman of influence as you encourage and influence others to give back. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So as we move on, I want to provide just a few highlights of the current environment we're in and how you can gift. And, so many times when we think of the word philanthropist or benefactor, we're thinking of Bill and Melinda Gates, or perhaps more locally here, Bob and Sheila Challey. But gifts can start small, and everything is important. And so as we talked about being at that 367 million as part of our capital campaign, and how do we close that gap and get to $400 million? So a couple of ideas I have, and we'll hear more from our philanthropists who are part of the webinar today, is, sometimes it's as easy as writing a check. My very first check to NDSU, oddly enough, was $25 because I knew I had received such a value for what I paid at NDSU for tuition and room and board, and I found such value in my faculty. So sometimes it's as easy as writing a check. We have donors who will use their credit cards who want to receive points that they will use based on their purchases. They accumulate points. That's another way. Another way is even using appreciated assets. For example, stocks and bonds. And even though the economy doesn't feel very good right now, believe it or not, the markets have been doing really well. And there's a lot of nuanced rules that go with contributing an appreciated asset that we can get into. But in general, if you hold them for more than a year, you can donate that. And what's really positive is the organization does not have to pay a capital gains tax. So all of the staff here at the foundation will be able to get into more of those rules for you. Or I always encourage you, talk to your own financial advisors, your attorneys, your accountants, because next I'm going to give you just 5 tips to consider in 2020. So we've all heard about the CARES Act, and what does that stand for? And it stands for the Coronavirus Aid, Relief and Economic Security Act. And there are some provisions in here that will be gone at the end of 2020. So first off, I want to share that, as we all know, we filed our taxes. They were extended. They were due July 15th. And for many of us, we've seen that we're no longer able to itemize our deductions because those exemptions went up. Well, in 2020, there's this special provision as part of that CARES Act that even if you don't itemize your income tax returns, you can deduct up to $300 of a gift to a public charity. So no need to itemize. This is something, again, just in 2020. For anyone who is considering a larger gift, we all know that the deductibility of that is subject to something called your adjusted gross income. And in previous years, that has been restricted to, say 50 or 60% of your cash gifts or 30% for appreciated property. But this year, it is up to 100% of your adjusted gross income. Again, this gets really complex. There's a lot of details. So you can visit with one of your financial experts to see, does this fit your personal situation? In addition to that, if you own a business, the provision there is the business can give this year up to 25% of cash contributions from a corporation. So just a couple of items that are unique in 2020. In addition, many of us received a tax relief check of $1,200 this spring. I've heard some individuals say, well, I just put that in my checking account or savings account. I'm saving that for a rainy day. And what I'd like to share is many nonprofits have seen some of their income streams dry up. And so being able to use that $1,200 for living expenses, but also consider some of the nonprofits like NDSU and contribute a share of that. And then last, if any of you are taking what are called RMDs, which are required minimum distributions from your IRAs, we know this year that they've been put on hold. You do not have to take that required minimum distribution. However, I do want to point out that sometimes you don't have cash sitting around in your savings account or your checking account, but you have had significant growth in your IRA. So I just wanted to point out that qualified charitable distributions are still allowed from your IRA in 2020. So please know that that provision is available. And again, on any of these, talk to your financial advisors because there are a lot of details that go into the rules and the execution of some of these tips. So 5 tips for you there. We're happy to discuss those a little bit more at the end of the webinar. So next up, I am really excited to introduce Ann Noble. She is a 1982 graduate of NDSU in, as I said, architecture, as well as her husband, Dan. Her interests have included supporting the architecture program, department funds, Clyde Hall, and then ultimately an establishment of their own scholarship fund. So Ann has retired from HKS, so we're super excited to hear that too when people show us that retirement is possible even in these unprecedented times. But she's still involved with HKS Architects. They are the 3rd largest firm in the country. A couple of projects that you may have seen, whether it's around town here at Sanford Health or very cool, the US Bank Stadium. She's also involved in the advisory board called Citizen HKS and works on their social enterprise initiative. So welcome, Ann. We're so happy to have you here with us from Texas.
Thank you, Stacey. I'm very pleased to be joining you. We've gotten a little bit of reprieve from the Texas heat, but I'm still happy to be inside. I compare our Texas summers to North Dakota winters. You just stay inside and try avoid it.
I heard someone say 100 degrees and it was 100% humidity. So we're glad to hear you have a little relief today.
Yes, yes. It's actually nice out today.
Well, wonderful. Well, we understand you are a North Dakota native and that you did meet your husband at NDSU. So do you want to share with us a little bit of that story?
Yes, I was born and raised in Park River, North Dakota. So shout out to all any Park River people that are out there. And I began my NDSU days in 1977, enrolled in the College of Architecture. There were, I think, 5 to 6 women out of about 50 or 60 in the program first year. So we were small in numbers, but pretty mighty. Now, as to the love of my life, you mentioned Dan. He and I actually met our freshman year in freshman English, but it wasn't until second year in the late night in the architecture studio that we kind of took notice of each other. And I don't, when people, how they sing real loud when they have headphones on and they forget that they've got headphones on. Well, that was my attraction to him. I had to find out who was doing that. So that's where it all started.
So he must have had a remarkable voice.
I don't know. Remarkable's kind of no, yes, I will say it was remarkable. Remarkably loud, maybe.
Yeah. Memorable.
There you go. There you go.
Well, similar to when we were visiting with Elnore, I would love to know a little bit more about why giving back, and in particular, why NDSU is one of your passions.
Well, I really believe that philanthropy supports my personal beliefs. And one of those, like Elnore, is education, the importance of education. And similar to her story, I always felt like I was expected to go to college. And I think my siblings would say the same thing. It might not have been, it wasn't, are you going to college? It's which college are you going to? And of course, we just had 2 choices, the 2 North Dakota schools. I went to NDSU. Some of my siblings went to the other one. And so it was really my parents that influenced that, and I think supported that idea of education. And so supporting NDSU allows me to reinforce that personal belief for myself. Now, I also saw my parents give of their time and talents to a small town. They volunteered and served on boards because that made the town thrive and made the town grow. And really reinforced that idea of community. And so I think in a way, giving back helps me help a broader community, if you will.
Well, thank you for sharing what an influence your parents were. And, Elnore also talked about being a role model. And so I'm curious, do you have some of those conversations with your children? Sometimes talking about money is a little bit taboo in our country, but it's so important that we're communicating those values. So are those conversations that you've had with your children, and how have you started those?
I think I've done it more through example and through the stories. I mean, we talk about NDSU and when we've gone up there and the recipients that we've met, they hear the stories. Now, I also have told them, because they both went to college, and those colleges would approach us for donations. And I have told my children, my donation was your tuition. I will support my alma mater and you support yours when you can. And so trying to reinforce that with them. And I hope, telling the stories to other people would reinforce that with them. And they ask about, well, how did you start giving? And so just telling our story. Like you said, I'm a North Dakota Lutheran, and I have told people before that it's hard for me to talk about money, let alone even ask for money. So I have to have an out of body experience, I tell them when I do that.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you for, showing and being that example and sharing stories. I think that's one of the most powerful ways for us to communicate. And one of the stories that I think our viewers will be so interested in is both your husband and you have funded scholarships, but you had an opportunity to, not only meet one of your recipients, but to really have a culturally enriching experience. Can you share that story with us?
Yes, Dan and I we're at the Beaux-Arts Ball, which is the architecture end of year in May, big celebration in 2019. And that's when the scholarships are awarded for the next year. So we were actually able to meet Noor, who was our recipient that year. We talked with her and immediately, she's funny, she's bright, she's energetic, she's intellectual. We had a connection with her immediately. And so Dan asked her if she would like to have an internship down in Dallas for the summer at HKS. She took him up on it right away. And we kept talking, and I asked her about housing in Dallas, short-term housing, if she knew of anybody. And I did not want that to be a stumbling block. And so I offered to have her stay with us, stay in the house. She took us up on it. And the first day that she arrived in Dallas was the first day of Ramadan. And as a very spiritual Muslim, she partook in all of the practices. And so it was an education. I grew and I saw this loving, giving person, and kind of the rites and practices that she did and the sacrifices that she made were impressive. And so I thought, like I said, I got more from that than she did, I'm sure. And as far as the scholarship is concerned, it was educational and enlightening. We were also able to meet her parents that summer. They came over from Egypt and just found more similarities than differences with them, especially when it comes to raising daughters.
Yeah. And it really gets back to, what do we all have in common as human beings? So thank you for sharing that very personal story. So we talked scholarships, but I also know that you and Dan have supported building projects. And we were reminiscing as we were preparing for this. I said, I remember being a student on campus and seeing I believe it was like a metal Quonset that the architecture students were working in. So maybe tell us a little bit about what that was like for you, and then why you now contribute and are involved in building projects at NDSU.
Yes, we did have a studio third year and then some in fifth year in what was called the Quonset hut, famous. I have to say it was the coldest building on campus in the winter. It literally had no insulation. Fortunately, the warmest spot in the building was the women's restroom. So there were many late night naps and in the women's restroom to get a little bit of relief from the cold. And it was the hottest in the summer also. And so you talked about the department then later after we graduated has moved to downtown Fargo, which we just thought was exciting and, it kind of invigorated the downtown or enhanced the downtown and the architecture program. They first renovated the Northern School Supply building into Renaissance Hall. And then a few years later, they wanted to bring the whole department into downtown Fargo and purchased, I think it's it was an mutual insurance building.
Lincoln Mutual. Yep, Lincoln Mutual.
Okay, and transformed that into Cly Hall. John Cly was a TA of mine when I was a freshman. So he was a fifth year when I was a freshman. And we have just maintained contact over the years. And so when he approached us to donate to the building fund, it was an easy thing to do. You need the sticks and bricks or the mortar over your heads to get a good education. That's one of the elements. And so we actually sponsored the model shop room, which in the digital age, I'm not sure if it's still being used, but it helped to get that project completely funded. We were happy to support it.
Yeah, so important for us to have our students have excellent facilities as well as technology. And I know sometimes those aren't the most exciting projects, right? We love hearing about the students, but we know how critical having a strong, future-focused infrastructure is for this campus.
Definitely.
So, well, how about if anybody has not sat down before with anybody from the foundation, what would you share about your experience?
Big thanks to the foundation, to Monique and all the team. They explained the why of giving, which aligned with our goals, right? But then they also made the how and the what very easy. And so our first scholarship was a pledge that happened in 2016. And it was mainly because the state of North Dakota was doing a 50% match that year. And so getting that explained to you in a real easy way to understand, it made our impact, or made us very impactful right away. We had given a little bit, we had a 7-year pledge, but the state gave the full 50% that first year. So the next year we were able to award a scholarship. And so I think they explained it in ways that were impactful and easy to do.
Yeah. Wonderful. So it's something not to be intimidated by, right? It's really about sitting down, understanding your goals, what it is you want to accomplish, and finding that alignment.
And I applaud their perseverance. I mean, they need to have that. And yes, Elnore was challenging other people. So I challenged the other architecture classmates to give and be a part of In Our Hands. It's a great campaign.
Well, and that's a great segue. Before we talked about what can you do now to contribute, mm-hmm. and there's also a way to give later. So sometimes we could coin that, if not now, however, later. And so I'm going to just share a couple of ideas around what's called deferred giving. And so we know that there's uncertain times right now with the market. We know that a lot of individuals want to kind of hold on to what you have in your savings accounts and your checking accounts. So just a couple of ideas, and I'm going to go through these very quickly because we're getting just a little bit long here. So what are some of those later gifts, those deferred gifts? And for example, you may own a life insurance policy or a retirement policy, and you can name NDSU or other philanthropic organizations as a beneficiary. Simple, easy to do, change a beneficiary form. And what's really cool about that is it doesn't require a trip to your attorney's office. It isn't something that's permanent. You can always change it. And I'm a huge fan of naming a nonprofit as a beneficiary of your retirement accounts, because anytime you take a distribution from that retirement account, typically it is going to be taxable. Now, these are traditional IRAs, not Roths, 401k plans, 403b plans. And what you can do too is with these beneficiary designations, you can designate a percentage that goes to heirs or to your nonprofit of your choice. In addition to that, we're going to talk with Barb shortly about estate planning documents like wills, revocable living trusts, where you can specify a bequest as a dollar amount or a percentage. And then last but not least, we also have what I call split interest gifts, where perhaps you want to retain some of that income, but you want that remainder balance to go to somewhere like NDSU. So there are strategies like charitable trusts as well as charitable gift annuities. So we're going to cover those a little bit later, but earlier we talked about the how to give today using cash, credit cards, appreciated assets. Some of these strategies are how you can give later so that your organizations can continue on in perpetuity that you've been supporting during your lifetime. So I just want to thank Anne for sharing with us so many of her stories that are just so meaningful. And then next up, I have the privilege of introducing Barb Jones, and she is a 1970 graduate of the pharmacy program. Her husband, Mike, is also an NDSU grad, but they claim not to have known each other. But I have a feeling he probably had his eye on you. He was about a year older than you when you were on campus. And they both have been so involved in a multitude of programs, everything from athletics to performing arts to, of course, the pharmacy program, as well as helping with scholarships regarding the Gulf students. So welcome, Barb. We are so happy to have you with us today.
Good afternoon, Stacey, and it's fun to be on this panel with you and Anne and Elnore. It's such a privilege to share our story and get excited about giving back to the university that gave us the success.
Well, and that's a great place to start. You use the words giving back. So tell us what inspired you to get started giving back at NDSU.
It was the old telemarketing program back over 30 years ago. Like all the other panelists here, we started small, year after year after year. And as we were able to increase our gifts, we made that contribution and that dedication to give back to the university. And now we have the 3 scholarships that we're so happy to be part of those students' lives.
Yeah. Well, and
it's fulfilling. It's fulfilling. And if these students then can give back and pay it forward in another 15 years, that would be wonderful. That's what we need right now.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a theme today, being that role model, giving back and supporting others so that successor generations do the same. So I heard that back in, was it February or March, you had an opportunity to golf with some of your scholarship recipients. Tell us a little bit about what that was like in Arizona.
Oh, it was wonderful. To say that we were golfing, we were there with the girls and they showed us how to golf. We received a call from Matt in the athletic department, wondering if we would be able to find a course for the girls to play and do a practice round right before they had a competition the next week. And we thought, well, we have 2 courses we probably could get them on, but would it be possible for us to join them? And he said, by all means. So we were able to play with 2 of our senior scholarship recipients, wonderful, lovely young gals who are going to be going on into their careers and be very, very successful. And were roommates all through their college experience. So it was just a fun afternoon for us and an opportunity for us to meet our recipients. Golf right now is one of those sports where we can get outside and enjoy and be healthy and stay 6 feet apart. And the skills you learn in college to play golf, the honesty, the life skills that golf teaches you will carry on all throughout your career, both professionally and sports-wise and in your athletics.
Yeah. And I would add, if any of you are golfers, you learn how to deal with a lot of frustration and disappointment.
Definitely.
Maybe that's just me. So, well, I think that is just fabulous that you got to spend some of that one-on-one time, share your story, and really inspire them to see what's possible in a career and with their educations.
And they're awesome golfers too.
Oh, tremendous athletes, just tremendous. So one of the things that I think you have done that is very unique is you have provided for NDSU as part of your estate plan. And when I say an estate plan, that is where you have that opportunity to sit down with a lawyer, talk about what is it you want to have happen with your assets. And in the United States, I hear the statistic moving around quite a bit, but upwards of 50% of Americans do not have an estate plan. So they don't have a will, they don't have a revocable living trust. And so I think that was very forward-looking of Mike and you to have those conversations, sit down with an attorney, and thinking about the impact you can have in perpetuity by providing for NDSU and your documents. So can you share share with us what that experience was like and what some of those decisions were that you had to make.
Well, I know we've been meeting with John Glover and the staff over the years and listening to the needs of the university. What is it the university needs? And hopefully we can help in that, help them in achieving some of the goals the university has. So we have sat with our state attorney, and we do have our wills, and we will be providing in some areas of the university, hopefully not tomorrow. And it's working with our accountant also and our financial team. So it kind of takes a village to get this going, but with the help of the university and working with John, it's been a very pleasant and rewarding experience. And it's an ongoing experience also, because as things evolve, as new programs and challenges come up, we're constantly looking and reviewing it and revising it, both on for our estate and on a yearly basis. What does the university need tomorrow in bricks and mortar or equipment or scholarships?
Yeah. So a couple of things I heard you say is, it really is a team sport. It is about getting NDSU involved. It's about working with your CPA, with your attorney. And I think sometimes we hesitate because we feel like that decision is permanent. It's irrevocable. But you made a really great point around every year, we can make adjustments. We can change that. So as you're making those decisions, don't feel like they're set in stone and that they can't change with your personal needs as well as the institution's needs. I think that's just so absolutely critical.
Very important.
Yeah. So next up, I understand that both Mike and you have contributed and also been involved with some building projects on campus. So tell us why that was important to you.
Well, the pharmacy building has grown quite a bit in the last 30, 40 years, from College of Pharmacy to the Health Science building and now to the Aldebaran Tower. And the students need state-of-the-art equipment and buildings. The teachers need to provide the space, and the students need to get excited about their learning experience. We need to send those students back out in the competitive market with the tools that they can be competitive, they can be successful. And unfortunately, we don't want to teach in Quonset huts anymore. And you need as the programs evolve and the programs grow, and the class sizes hopefully continue to increase, we need the facilities to help these students. We need them to be excited. We need them to be successful. We need them to go out and be competitive out there. And part of that are the buildings and the equipment, along with the educators that are top notch. Then we have excellent students and excellent alumni.
Right. We need to continue to innovate and be an attractive place to make sure that we're bringing in the best and the brightest.
Definitely.
I also understand that both you and your husband have served as campaign ambassadors. Anything that you want to share with us in closing?
It's been wonderful to be an ambassador for NDSU. Our hearts and our house is full of NDSU paraphernalia. So we love NDSU. We're so thankful for what the education gave us to be successful. And it's every time we go out to either Texas or Arizona and meet our NDSU family, we just get so excited about giving back and making sure that the university is successful in the future with the student scholarships, with the buildings, and it's the foundation for North Dakota is NDSU.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Barb, for your dedication. Thank you for everything that you're doing for our students, our campus, and our faculty. And one fun fact about Barb is she has attended 50 consecutive years of homecoming. So I can't think of, if you have the word dedication, we're going to put Barb's picture right above that.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Barb, for sharing your stories.
You're welcome. Thank you, Stacey.
So next up, we're going to talk just very briefly about the Legacy Challenge, and I will soon be bringing in Becky Rothenbeck, who is the expert. But I wanted to share a special new innovative program that Monique is going to be launching. And we're so excited. Bob and Sheila Challey have designated $1 million to serve as matching funds for anyone who designates a planned gift at NDSU. So you've already heard us talk about beneficiary designations on life insurance, retirement accounts. We've talked about the importance of having wills and trusts for your family, but also to convey your wishes around how you want your hard-earned dollars to live on after you've passed away. So how this Legacy Challenge works is if you name if you name NDSU in one of these documents, if you were to list NDSU as the beneficiary of, from let's just say $1 to $99,999, there's a 10% match that is designated, and you will be able to provide this to an existing dedicated fund on campus, cash today. And there are 3 tiers to this. So from $100,000 to just shy of $1 million, that's much more easier for me to say. That match is $10,000. And then any designated gift of $1 million or more as part of a legacy plan would receive a gift of $25,000 that you could designate to an existing NDSU fund. So Bob and Sheila, they know how important planning is and thinking ahead, and they want to encourage others to have that same experience, whether it's Bob and Sheila or Mike and Barb. So we can answer many more details on that. It is certainly very complex, but what a phenomenal opportunity to learn more about. So next up, I am bringing Becky Rothenbeck into the conversation. And many of you have probably known Becky as the development director for the Colleges of Science and Math, but she now has a new position, the Director of Gift Planning. So Becky, can you share with us a little bit about what your new role entails?
Sure, I can. I'm excited to join the gift planning team. Part of my role as a gift planner is to connect with alumni and NDSU supporters and help them achieve their desired impact and legacy at NDSU through a planned gift. Like Stacey mentioned, we have a lot of different gifting options available to us, and we can help tailor them to fit all of our donors' needs.
Well, that is tremendous. And there just are a plethora of opportunities, and it's really about matching those specifically to your situation. And that's where Becky, Monique, and John and the rest of the team can have those conversations around what's really important to you, and then what is a way for you to optimize that strategy from a planning perspective. So Becky, I understand that you have been watching comments and questions come in. And so we're going to invite the entire panel back onto the screen. I know we're running short of time, so we may only have an opportunity for 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 questions. But Becky, what questions would you like to start out with?
So thanks everybody for submitting questions. Our first question is for Elnore. Did you receive any scholarship support, and what inspired you to be philanthropic?
Okay, I actually interviewed for a scholarship at University of North Dakota, and they told us that since my parents owned our farm and owned our car, that we didn't need it. So I decided if I didn't go to the University of North Dakota, I would go to North Dakota State. And I received no scholarships. However, I did have an NSF work situation between my junior and senior year, which did pay some money, and it helped me decide what to do with the rest of my life. I did not enjoy doing research in that chemistry lab at 80 degrees and no air conditioning in those days. And so I decided to become a teacher. And so when I went back for my senior year, I took a whole bunch of education classes went ahead and got my degree, and then went to Austria for 6 months, came back, did my student teaching at Fargo High School, winter quarter then when I came back, and then started teaching the following year. So that NSF grant helped me to figure out what to do with the rest of my life.
Perfect. Our next question comes from a current NDSU student, and this is for Anne. What are some of the ways us women can now ensure that we are strong competitors for the scholarships that you discussed?
Wow, great question. Stay strong, stay energetic, really engage with your education. With our scholarship, it's the faculty and the department that selects the recipient. We don't have anything to do with it. And because they're really the experts on the students. So put your best foot forward. That would be my advice.
My next question is for Barb. When did you begin to give to NDSU, and what inspired you to start, and what inspires you to continue?
Like I said, I think the first was a telemarketing request back in the early 70s. And our first gift was $25. And I think both of us, as the years went on towards the late 70s, then we thought, okay, we definitely have a secure profession. We can start giving a little bit more and more. And it was basically a thank you, a big thank you to the university, to the professors, and to our counselors that had faith in us, and for us, and that we would graduate and be out there and hopefully give back.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for submitting questions. We appreciate your participation, and we're at the end of our program, and I'd like to leave you with one question for our viewers. If I could show you how you can make an impact and also leave a legacy at the same time, would you be interested in learning how? Following this program, there'll be a slide with my contact information. Please feel free to reach out and contact me. I'd love to hear from all of you.
Right. Well, in closing, I again want to thank our amazing, trailblazing women who were part of this panel, who have just shown us the way, both in careers and in our communities, as well as in giving. So thank you for being the role models and caring about that next generation. We are so fortunate to have you as alumni. I'd also like to thank our planning committee once again. And this is not part of the script, but I'm going to embarrass Emily and Nicole because they have been running the technology. We're trying something new. It's innovative, with a few heart palpitations here and there, but we are just so excited that you joined us. The technology worked, and we got to hear all of these inspiring stories. So with that, I will close. And if there are topics that you want to hear about in the future, and if there are questions that we did not get to, because I know we breezed at a real high level over some of the strategies, we are here for those conversations and to be those resources. So in closing, all I will say is go Bison.
Go Bison.